Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Sunday Night Live, the automotive show where we talk about all things automotive. Doesn't matter if it's variable ops, fixed ops. I don't care if it's about the receptionist at the service counter. It has to do with the car business. We talk about it and we bring on the experts that share with us the things that they know, things that they practice, and what will make us all greater individuals. And today I am honored to have Hunter Swift on the show. This guy has a wicked resume. If you read his bio, guy's been around the block and he knows a couple of things. And he started a company and he's got some interesting things that he's going to share with us. So I'm very excited to have him on the show. I try to bring on people that not everybody always has, because those are the people that bring the gold to the show. And today will be no different. I want to give you a couple of updates. First, on the double knee replacement surgery front. Recovery is going well. My physical therapist said that my right knee was swollen about an inch more than the left knee. And the icing piece worked for a while, but it doesn't really seem to be doing much. So what I found is working for me now is elevating the knees. So I put pillows up, so I'm laying on my back with my knees in the air, and I have this warming. I ordered an electric blanket today because I get real cold still. I have this warming pad that I've been using that's been working pretty well. My walking is going great. After elevation, the swelling is going down some, so I'm able to get a wider range of motion in the right knee, so that when I go down the stairs, I can do the up every other step, no problem, and I don't feel the stretch like I used to. So I know I'm making some progress there. So that's all good stuff. The pain, it kind of comes and goes, but it's a little bit less than it's been. So that's the update on the knees front. And another special thing, my fixed ops brother and good friend Gene Girdley, from the Gene Pool, his new book just came out, The Miles and the Markers. Okay, you can buy it on Amazon. I suggest you do. Gene is an awesome dude. He is my fixed ops brother, part of the Fixed Ops Roundtable, and his new book. You know, the great thing about community online is that we support each other. So I'm not putting any kind of undue pressure on anybody, but if you wouldn't mind buying his book, that'd be greatly appreciated, because that'd help him out. And it'll help you out, because there's some interesting stuff in there. All right, so that's the stuff out of the way that I wanted to get out of the way. And now, welcome, Hunter Swift. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about you, how you got here? I told Hunter, don't go past 5th grade, because then it gets a little bit long. But anything after that's fair game. I'd love to have you share with the audience.
Yeah. First of all, Paul, thank you for having me. You've done some great things for this industry and have a great reputation for helping dealers. So I'm glad that I am able to be on your show, and hopefully some of the knowledge that I have can help your audience. But I won't go back to 5th grade. Maybe I'll just go to right out of high school. One of my first jobs out of high school was selling cars. So I got my sales experience selling at a Chrysler, Plymouth, Jeep, Eagle, and Dodge store, and then ended up going to a Mazda store. And then I said, you know what, I want to get out of this. I want to do something more technical. So I got and joined a company called DealerSocket, was there for 13 years. And so there really honed in my expertise on CRM and customer experience and improving the overall sales process at a dealership. After 13 years, I wanted to do something else and new. So I thought, hey, why don't I give a track with advertising? So I joined a large full service ad agency out in Pennsylvania called Dealer World. And there, ended up, learning about driving traffic to the dealership and helping dealers stand out. And then I kind of had this desire to get back into technology. And so partnered with a partner of mine named Jamil, who also came from the dealership world. He ran a dealership. And we were talking and we said, hey, what are some of the problems that dealerships face? And, we put our head together and we started coming up with some solutions. And we do a lot of things, but one of the things that, we wanted to do was to create a new CRM. So we just launched a new CRM called Dealers Gear CRM. 17 years in automotive, and I love it. It's provided for my family for, my whole marriage, and I love it. I love helping dealers, and that's a little bit about me.
That's awesome, man. You know, what I love about your background is that, we share some similarities, right? We've come through the dealer world. We may have different parts of it that we've worked through at a dealership, but we both worked in the culture. We understand the business because we've been part of it, right?
Absolutely.
We've seen car deals penciled, cars appraised, interaction with customers, which is something that a lot of road warriors today don't necessarily have the luxury of having seen. A lot of these guys come from other industries, and no disrespect against the other industries, but our culture, and I know everybody's going to say, "Oh, we're different," but our culture really is different. And unless you're part of it and you've had some of it go through your veins, it's sometimes hard to fully understand. And so,
Absolutely. Yeah. Coming from a technology side, I've seen a lot of other software companies enter our space who were very smart, right? And had great technology, but they just
yeah,
didn't understand the car buying process and understand, the road to sale is different. And the fact that the people that are using these softwares, not everything will work, right? And so I think that's been, one of the reasons why we haven't seen a lot of innovation. But at the same time, it's tricky because a lot of times what works in another industry doesn't always work to ours. So
now a couple of cool things. I got notice from StreamYard that what they're doing now is the show actually broadcast as part of the header.
oh,
Like,
that's awesome.
normally there's a background photo on the LinkedIn profile. Now the show will actually broadcast from there, and then it goes back to your photo afterwards. Something
Awesome.
I want to share that I saw today, and let me just bring it up here. This is today, and granted, it's a holiday. Happy Easter to everybody that celebrates Easter. On Facebook, which is a place where, I don't know, a couple billion people or so live that tune in, I don't know, a couple hundred times a day. It's almost sad, but the reality is that's where people spend their time. And in the car business, we're always bothered by the disruptors, right? The people that come into our business, and they take our business. Well, I've taken ownership a long time ago that we bring in the disruptors, because the disruptors typically fill a void that we haven't filled. So we're really the ones that need to take ownership of these guys and gals coming into our business. But I want to point something out. So today is a holiday, yes, and I have counted just casually throughout the day. I've 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. You know what that number 21 represents? That's 21 ads, promoted ads that I've seen in Facebook, where like I said, a couple of billion people live, promoting their business. Companies like Carvana, Vroom, CarMax. These are the disruptors that are actively seeking the business, our business. There's one local group that advertised 2 of their stores. And when I say local, they're about 45 minutes away from me. But other than that, I haven't seen any other franchise dealers in my market advertise that they're aggressively looking for business. And most of these ads centered around one thing, and that's buying cars from the consumer off the street, right? Inventory is hard to come by today. New car inventory is down for a couple of reasons. The chip shortage, right? Ford cut back on production. Some other manufacturers have too. So it means less new cars, right? That's one shortage. What that means is that now there's more fleets that are getting older. So the fleet companies that would buy up a lot of these new cars, because it represents a large chunk of the new car market, they're not able to get all the cars they need. So they're holding on to the cars longer. So now there's less fleet cars coming off. It's a domino effect. When the fleet cars do become available, now they have higher mileage on them, which then increases the recon costs to the the dealer that buys them, which then in turn increases the cost that the consumer has to pay. So people were thinking, oh, it's a pandemic. This is a great time to buy a car. I'm going to save money. Not necessarily the case, because there's not enough inventory all the way around. And that data I share with you comes compliments of my good friend Paul Machine with Black Book. Put an article out that I shared in a couple of spaces online that this guy's dialed in on the data. And like I said in that post, you can't beat the computer at chess, so why try? And if you try to make decisions without data, it's not so good, because you can't outsmart the computer. I want to address a couple of the guests here. Patricio, Pat Porras. Hola, Paul. Glad you're doing well, amigo. Thank you, man. Thank you very much. Steve Cheston, service and sales. Steve's got some interesting used cars that come into his lot. He's in California. And Pat says, congrats, Hunter. Great passion. Ty Thompson, Cars on the Move. It's part of Auto Transport Intel on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to their channel. Great stuff. You learn all about the trucking industry. Thanks for joining, Ty. And Dale Novotniak. Hunter brings a new way of thinking about how to manage the CRM user experience and the salesperson and sales manager accountability. Accountability, that word that starts with the letter A. Yeah. So often overlooked. So often overlooked. And I love that because accountability is key. The thing that most people hate about CRMs is that people aren't held accountable. People don't use it because maybe the user interface isn't that good. And then at the end of the month, when they've got 500 overdue tasks, instead of being held to task, locked in a room, finish your shit. No, the manager then wipes out those 500 calls. What have you done? You've done nothing. So I love this. He says, I had a chance to see the dealer gear system a few weeks ago. He will no doubt have success. Keep on, Hunter. We're going to hear about that in just a little bit. And Patricio says, data drives decisions. Yes, I think you like that coin. Data-driven decisions, the triple Ds. I like that. The other triple Ds. Sorry, had to go there. Lou Ramirez, the Coffee Guy podcast guy. What's happening, solutionaries? All right, so we've addressed everybody. Now, when you look at Hunter's bio, okay, he's got a lot of experience. Marketing, inventory, advertising, websites, and CRM that just came out. I want you kind of freestyle it. Start us off with what you think are some of the best practices are and things that dealers will benefit from.
Yeah. So first of all, you were kind of talking about these disruptors that are coming into our space. And, as we're looking at what we do to help dealers, right? We want to help dealers ultimately sell more cars. And as we build out technology, people are always coming up to me and saying like, well, what does the future look like, right? Is it digital retailing? Is it buying online? And you start looking at these competitors that you mentioned who are aggressively trying to get into this space. And what I see is the issue is the dealership is not, it's like, as you mentioned, you're allowing these companies to come in. And I think it's not because the consumer wants to buy cars online. I think it's because they're frustrated with the car buying experience, right? It takes too long. There's all these frustrations. We've had this negative stereotype that has, followed us for years. But we're not always looking at the core about, hey, what can we fix at the dealership, right? We're looking at what is the future? Is it some, shiny new widget? Is it digital retailing or what is it? But, when you look back, I think this has happened for a long time. I mean, I look back at third-party lead providers. When they came out, they were designed as an alternative to the car buying experience, like Cars Direct. And you still see today, right? Super Bowl, you have third-party lead providers who are bad-mouthing, the dealership. And here we're paying them to drive leads. And so this process has happened for a long time. And I think what's happening now is we keep looking into the future and forgetting to look inside. And one perfect example that I always like to mention is Apple. They're one of the most technical digital companies. You can buy all of their products online. But pre-COVID, right, if you went to the mall and you went to the Apple store, it was crowded. And so that kind of proves to me that the consumer doesn't want to do everything online. But when you go visit a Apple store, right, there's not even salespeople. They're experts that know the product. You can try the product. You could even do work at an Apple store. They're not going to kick you out. And, their product is a premium and people will pay that. But then you go into a dealership and a tire kicker is actually looked down upon. This is the most important decision that they're going to make besides a house. And we're not letting them do the research, right? It's, look, are you ready to buy? If not, you're wasting my time. And I think in our industry, just another point is we haven't done a really good job of separating shopping and buying. And what happens is a lot of times in our industry, we combine that and we have people that are doing the research and we're trying to push them. And we're so convinced that they submitted a lead and they are wanting to buy, but they're doing their research. And a lot of times, even when they're going to TrueCar or Edmunds, they have no idea when they're submitting leads on these sites that they're going to even be submitting a lead. Even when they go to our website, the price, just to see if the car is in the market, says click here for e-price. They click on it, they fill out a form thinking they're going to get a price, and then they click on it and it says, thank you for submitting a lead. Somebody's going to respond to you, and now they're bombarded with follow-up. Yeah. And then we ask, well, why is customer service down? Why are these consumers not wanting to buy cars from us? Why are they looking for alternatives? That's the reason. Ultimately, you know, if we can go back to the basics and provide like a better experience and not be so aggressive on like, you know, trying to push people to buy, I think we'll do a lot better. So at that one point I wanted to add, I don't know if you want to add any comment on that before I start talking about the technology.
No, I do. No, that's a great point to, you know, tire kickers. Unless you're there to buy a car, get out, right? I don't want to waste my time with you. Well, I think the data today indicates that most people that are in the market, they're in like a 90-day cycle of when they're going to buy cars. So, you know, the model that we had before, which was come in, pound them into submission and send them home in a car. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard the words, wow, I had no intention of buying a car today, as you're out there in 110 degrees offloading all the stuff from their Corolla into their new Legacy. Yeah, right? They had no idea they were buying a car, but they're being pounded. So today, we a lot of times still have the same model where we're looking for that person that's buying immediately, when the reality is it's a 90-day cycle, right? Yeah. So now, rather than nurture that cycle and give them what they want, and keep them in the funnel and keep pulling them down deeper and deeper until they're ready to go, you know, that's not happening. And that contributes to a lot of frustration on the consumer part. Let me go to a couple of comments here. Pat says, accountability is similar to empowerment. Business leaders need training and development in this area. Absolutely, because a lot of them don't hold their people accountable. And like I just said about the clearing out of the overdue.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even just with what we're talking about right now with that customer experience, a lot of the accountability is about calls, right? Are people making the follow-up call? And it's not about what are the processes at our store to ensure a quality customer experience. I always joke and say sometimes the dealership's more concerned about a positive CSI score or a positive review than the actual customer experience. The accountability needs to be more on when somebody walks onto the lot, does the process happen then, right? It's not, I can't let a salesperson take that up and then walk back in and say, oh, they weren't interested. They drove to the dealership, right? There was some intent, right? When somebody goes to the dealership and they are asking questions, are we making sure that all of those questions are answered so that when they leave, they have those answers versus going somewhere else to get those? When they're trying to get a payment, do we make it hard for them to get that payment? When they've decided that they want to buy, do we drag that process on for a long time to where now doubt gets in, right? All these things start happening. That's where some of that accountability should come in. And it doesn't just happen from like a salesperson level or a sales manager person. It sometimes involves like the dealer, you know, the management, the general manager and the dealer principal, making sure that that stuff actually happens.
There's an old Italian saying, the fish stinks from the head. Everybody is responsible for that experience. Now, I think you have a fan here, and my buddy Stan Scher. He says, my man out there, Swift.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah, he's a great guy. As a matter of fact, I just shared a photo. He and I, it's, you know, time happened so fast. It was like 2 years ago that I was out in Jersey, and he and I, you know, we spent some time together, which was really good. I love Stan. Kenneth Dunner, savor the flavor of the awesomeness in you peeps. From Sugar Land, Texas, southwest of Houston, baby. And Pat says sales process needs to be focused on connecting with the up/lead, especially explaining to them the buying process.
That's great.
The fear of the unknown is a lot of what stops people from going forward with transactions.
Yeah.
And I think what Pat's saying here is by guiding them, everybody wants to be led, right? They want a professional to lead them through the process. So if you explain to them what's happening at each step and why, then you've got a lot better chance of that transaction going forward and being able to discover the things that will determine whether or not the product you have actually fits what they're looking for. Because the new business model is not about jamming them. It's about, do you solve the problem that they have, and have you taken the time to do the discovery to earn that right? Jared Calquist, welcome.
Yeah, and you made another great point there too about letting the customer know that journey and what that looks like. And I think those Carvana, like if you want to sell your car online, they've done a really great job of, if you want to sell your car online to one of these places, it tells you this is what you do. You fill out the information. Somebody's going to reach out to you with a payment. We'll come out and pick a car, and they have a clear expectation of what that is, and then it looks easy. When you go submit a lead on a car, like you don't know that process. You don't know how long it's going to take. You don't know what that is because that unknown, right? And so I think having a better job of communicating that, and if you can dial that in and come up with like a really good dealership way or something specific, that's something you can even advertise, right? So instead of saying, you could do like in and out in less than an hour, right? When you come in, you'll have this. All you need is this. Like that's something, if you really had it buttoned up tight, you could actually market, and then you just hold people accountable to following that process.
And the last picture in their ad, the last thing that the customer sees on their online ad is a young lady holding a check like this, like, we give you the money. When all is said and done, after you follow these 1, 2, 3 simple steps, we give you a check, we give you the money. But Jared says, those of us in the industry sometimes forget that vehicles are the second largest line chase of consumer life, buying purchase of the consumer life. Spell check, I think, messed that up. They want to buy on their timeline, and they are more in the driver's seat today than at any time in our industry. There's more information, transparency, send is easy to make, and the purchase on their terms than ever before. That is exactly right. That's why the models change. Now it's about, earning the right after doing the discovery. Do I fix what ails you? And if I do, then you'd want to go forward. It gets to the point where you don't have to ask them to buy. They want to buy from you. They ask you.
Well, and you make a great point of earning somebody's business. You're asking for something and then giving something of value in return. Like if you're asking for a customer for their email address, we've seen like I don't own like hunterswift@gmail.com. I wish I did. I was a little late. So my personal email is hunterswift1@gmail.com. That email is value to me. So I don't always want to give it out, because then next, I'm going to get bombarded with spam. And now I have to go to Hunter Swift 2, right? So the consumers, when you're asking for that, what are we giving them in return? Because if we're giving them in return spam, then they're not going to want to give us the email. But if we can provide them with knowledge, right? Or if we can provide them with some type of value, right? Then they'll give us more information. And that's everything that we do as we move down that cycle should be the same. And I think one of the comments was talking about loyalty. I actually think consumers are more loyal now to products and brands than they've ever been before. And when you think about it, I'm not referring maybe to like Ford, Chevy, but I'm looking at companies like hotels, airports, credit cards, right? I'm a very big Marriott guy. I'm a very big, American Express or Visa, even all the way down to the rental car, right? I'm very loyal. And the reason why, if you ask, and I'm sure you are too, why are people loyal to those brands? It's because they get something in return. They get rewards, right? Yeah. So I purposely do business with somebody and I choose which card I'm going to pull out of my wallet based off that return. Now, the OEMs do have some type of loyalty programs where maybe they'll offer, people who are coming out of a lease an extra $500. But is there any benefit or reward for a consumer to do multiple purchases or service at a dealership? And most of the time, the answer is no, right? So thinking about that as you're negotiating, as you're servicing, to give them some benefit of saying, hey, like after you've shaken the hand and you've agreed on this deal, set the expectation. Look, we reward repeat customers. So in 3-4 years, when you come back, I want to have first dibs on this vehicle, right? If you buy a car from us, we give you top dollar, right? Or we give you some type of incentive. If you get to the point where you've bought 2 vehicles for us, you get a free oil change a year, something like that, right? And that's how it creates loyalty, right? And if you build this into the process and the customer service and now the rewards, that's why people will keep doing and keep going back to your business versus, man, I got sold that car. I have that buyer's remorse. I think I got taken advantage. I'm never going back to them again. And that's the hard part, is because often we will lower the price on that car, not make as much, thinking that we're going to get that customer in the future. But if that experience is not great, not only did we lose the gross, but now we're losing out on that future business. Because I know people who will say, I never will buy a car from them. And I'm like, why? And the reason why sometimes a consumer doesn't buy a car, it's very minuscule, right? And those are things that can be fixed at a dealership, and that will that will keep loyalty and prevent people from going elsewhere, especially to the Carvanas and the Vrooms that are coming into this space.
And talk about loyalty. There are a lot of great salespeople that build loyalty. They build loyalty to them, right? I have had customers follow me, change brands, buy brands they didn't even know anything about, simply because they wanted to buy from me.
Yeah.
So the loyalty is there, but you have to cultivate that loyalty. And as stores, that's not always done. Let me get to a couple of comments here. Pat says, according to NADA, 79% of auto website leads close within 1 week, and those 54% are looking to buy within 3 days. Wow, there's so much data. I mean, I've seen data where it's a 90-day process. This data would indicate totally different. So I guess you have to be prepared for both, and you have to be able to pivot.
So can I add on that statistic? Think about the interactions that the customer might have in the car buying process. That first interaction might be on an OEM site, right? Gathering information. They might be on TrueCar or Edmunds trying to get that value. By the time that they've gotten to your website, that is when they're looking for the vehicle, the color, the equipment that's in stock, right? They're submitting a lead to set an appointment to see that specific vehicle. So that percentage, in my opinion, is high, but because they've already gone through this process. Now, think of that process, and the mistake of this statistic is when you assume that everybody that you're driving to the site is ready to buy, is one of those people. And if you're marketing well, you're going to be reaching people before they're in that space. And so that's why some of these statistics, I think, kind of skew, because as we get into follow-up, people think, well, if this is true, right? If after a week they don't answer my call, then they're probably not they're not probably in the market. So we're going to move them to lost, and you're losing out on those like opportunities for, longer as you go. But you mentioned, about the loyalty with salespeople and about, the overall experience, as we were talking about kind of CRM, like CRM stands for customer relation management. And I think for most CRMs and most dealerships, they focus on the CRM as a customer or the lead. And I always think of it as the R, right? It's the relationship tool. I love Facebook because every day I get notifications that say, hey, here are my friend's birthday. And occasionally I'll go out and I'll just say happy birthday to a couple people. And these people come back and I'm like, man, thank you so much, right? And this wasn't me, right? Like, I'm not that great of a friend. The system, it helps me remember that. And now all of a sudden I become the hero. And if you apply that to CRM and not think of it just as a tool to manage your leads into your follow-up, but to help manage that relationship. And I'd say that R can stand for a whole bunch of things, right? It can stand for repeat business. It can stand for referrals, retention. Why are we, when you start looking at like advertising, why are we always conquest advertising? Why are we always spending all this money on third-party lead providers when you're sitting on this huge database, right? I like to call it retention advertising, right? Like you have data, right? We spend $20, $50 for a lead that has an email address and maybe a phone number. When if I pull it from the CRM, I know every vehicle they've looked at, every time they've been at the store, every time they've called, their preferred method of contact. If they bought a car, I know their payment, their down payment, their APR, their trade value.
Everything, how much they've spent in service, how many times.
And it's just sitting there. And then I see dealers who are still conquesting advertising. So we do advertising as well. And like, I like to actually run lists in our CRM, target people in the CRM, and then export that into Facebook as a custom audience. So instead of using the audience builder in Facebook, which is getting smaller and smaller, and now with iOS 14, it's even smaller, I can get a very accurate group in Facebook and start marketing to those customers in Facebook. And I'm starting to see all kinds of results, right? As dealerships are looking into like the problem right now about acquiring vehicles, I talk to dealers all the time and say, well, where are you trying to generate these vehicles, right? And they're like, oh, We're doing some ads just like Vroom is, right? We're trying to find people who we can buy their trades. But the problem is, think back before this crash of it couldn't get a vehicle. How long has the dealership been sending out mailers that say, hey, we want your vehicle. You're going to receive top end. We've been using that tactic forever. And now all of a sudden we really need it, but it's not new, right? There's no urgency. And so you should be in the service drive. Yeah, you should be in the service drive. Like that should be a big source of your customers. Like any customer that has a customer pay RO that's out of warranty, they're upset that they're going to have to pay hundreds of dollars to continue driving that vehicle. I'd have a used car manager intercept every single one of those and say, look, I can help you save that money. Let's go look at a car with a brand new warranty, gets better gas mileage, has better features than what you have. I'll keep your payment relatively the same. Who would not listen to that, right? There's just like so many opportunities. And then even just on the like retention side of like, we should be marketing heavily to those people. Anyone who's bought a vehicle 3-4 years ago, we should be reaching out to, because we've set the false prefix of in a CRM, if somebody buys for 5 years, we don't start marketing to them till 6 months before that term. And the consumers sometimes think they can't get into a new vehicle until the end of their term. So if we could be, more right now should be really focused on the CRM, reaching out to those people to try to bring those people into the market. And if you do, if you have exclusivity, because once they submit a lead on a third party site, they're already shopping around, and the only way you're going to win that deal is by lowering the price. But if you can pull somebody into the market, and I know their previous deal structure, I can give them an accurate payment. When they turn around and they try to shop you, the payment that they get from the other dealership is always going to be high, because they don't know, like when somebody submits a lead, you don't ask like, do you have a vehicle? How many payments do you have? Like, what's your residual? Like, they don't know that type of stuff. You do. So that you could already beat the payment, because every other dealership is going to start high and work their way down. But on a repeat customer from your own database, you can get pretty close and quote a price over the phone, and that's what it's going to be. You don't have to start high and work your way low.
The old throw them up against the ceiling and peel them back down thing. You avoid that, you avoid half the problem spots. Let me get to a couple of comments. Lou Ramirez, Hunter is brewing this strong stuff. Consistency of Apple and other successful companies is what keeps their customers loyal. Building trust. They also keep themselves accountable in the process. You're absolutely right. Yes, you can buy everything online from them, and I oftentimes do. But I used to love going into the store and interacting with the geniuses. It was just, people like to be guided through the process. Pat says the new normality requires that sales and service staff embrace and are proficient in social media. It's where everybody lives. Okay, I consider LinkedIn social media, and most of my business if not all of my business comes off of LinkedIn and or Clubhouse and or Facebook, and I'm getting deals off of YouTube as well. So
and
it's where people live.
You mentioned sales and service, and I think a lot of times too is at the dealership we compartmentalize those. And even like as an advertiser, when I'm coming in and I'm doing a budget for a dealer, usually it's based off of sales, right? I say, where's the service director? Let's bring him in, right? How much of your budget is actually spent on service, right? And you start looking at like type in your area, oil change, tires, brakes, and see what comes up. The top listings aren't dealerships, right? And so you see these Jiffy Lubes that are doing these, $19.99 oil changes, and the dealership saying, man, how can I compete against this $19.99 thing? Well, guess what? Jiffy Lube is not in the business to do $19.99 oil changes. It's all of the other stuff that they upsell. And the guy underneath doing the oil, he's not a mechanic. He's not a factory certified trained technician. There's a benefit, again, giving value to the customer. And this needs to be on your website. It needs to be on your service page. It needs to be in your advertising and your marketing. Why should somebody service the vehicle at your dealership versus the Jiffy Lube? Well, when you have somebody under that car that knows, right, they can say, hey, look, that doesn't look normal, right? I'm going to fix that. Or, hey, your vehicle has a recall, right? These cars aren't stopping. When you push on the brakes, I can fix that. Everything that I do to that car is adding to that value. And I was at a Nissan after sale conference right before COVID, and they said something like 60% of consumers didn't know you could buy wheels, tires at a dealership, right? So they're going to all these different places. Let's get them in for tires. And then while they're there, right, you start adding all these other service things. So yeah, just there's a lot of things that we can fix, but on the, driving leads and stuff, it's so funny because they're so compartmentalized and they don't work together. I've even had, service people that say like, well, I don't want my service customers to buy a new car because they're so loyal. Well, guess what? If you've done a good job and they buy a new car, they'll continue to take that car. If I could trade that vehicle to, take the trade, sell it. Now you have 2 people in your service drive, right? There's just, you just got to kind of be a little bit more open in your thinking. But yeah, sales, service, advertising, retention advertising, marketing to your existing database are all really important things that is really at our core of what we've been doing with our products. So
now, Hunter and I just recently connected. And I got to tell you, this is the first time that you and I are sitting here having a face-to-face chat. And you know what I love about you? You got fire, bro. You got fire.
I love it.
Passion. You got passion.
I love that. I love helping dealers. And, what I hate the most is dealers and people who take advantage of dealers, right? Like, I hate people, at trade shows who are, no offense to anybody, but like, you're at a trade show, you're listening to a pitch, and it, like you're supposed to be there learning and it's a pitch, right? I haven't even talked about my tools or what we do, but I try to share my expertise and I love helping dealers, and I help a lot of dealerships and I don't make any money, right? Just from consulting because I want to see them succeed. Now, I also have some tools, right, that can help dealerships with that. And a lot of the products that we're developing is about helping dealers, but like, I don't want to be a guy that's just always pitching their product and saying, hey, the solution is my product, because we've seen too many people who sign up for products and then they don't work, right? At the end of the day, what I teach is about its process, its bigger picture, right? And it's stuff that trickles all the way from the dealership all the way down to the consumer. So I find joy by improving that customer experience, right? I want to make a bigger change in our industry because I know its potential, and it hurts me when you see so many deflectors, right, going to these, these people, like the online Carvanas and Zoom and stuff. And I see the potential, because who should know more about the vehicle than the people that are selling it? And when you're talking to somebody at one of these online companies, they know how to sell you a car. They don't know anything about the car, right? That's something that needs to be identified and marketed from a dealership. You should be saying why you should buy a car from you. It's not just about price. It's not just about the ease of use of online. There's more, and it's about the knowledge, right? I even, when you start talking about, and we're going all over the place, so I apologize, but when you're looking at like advertising and you're looking at SEO and you're trying to, create your website so that you have content, I see people who are always trying to put content about how to sell cars, and they're doing model pages and things like that. But I love creating content on websites that have to do with knowledge and about helping people get the information that they need. And one of the examples that I like to use is, how many new mothers are searching online how to put a car seat in a car? And I bet you if you search that right now, you're going to find an article on parenting.com. Why can't you have that information on a page on your website, along with all of the safety information that talks about how old does somebody have to be to ride in the front seat, right? What are some safety things, like all this stuff? And then they search it, they find that information, but guess what's going to be right at the top and on the bottom? A banner of the lease special on the minivan, right?
Yeah.
So like, those are just some things, like when I start thinking about like these coming to solutions with this stuff, it's very simple process. If we start doing these little things, Vroom can't do that, right? They're not going to do that. Like, it's just, the dealership is the expert. You know everything about that car. Why aren't we utilizing that to our advantage, right? Why aren't we
100%?
We're the authority. We should be driving the traffic to us. That's why it bugs me with how much dealerships are spending with third-party leads who are marketing traffic to land to their site. Then they they sell that back to you.
They repurpose our own customers.
Right? Like, you should be as aggressive as a third-party lead driving traffic to their site to your own dealership. So I don't know. We're talking about a lot of different stuff here, but hopefully your audience appreciates it. So
no, I like it because it's stuff that people aren't talking about. Let me get to a few comments here because I'm falling way behind. Pat says ETR earned the right to sell them 100%. Make it so that they want to give you the email address. Make it so that they ask you the buying questions as opposed to you having to force them. Lou Ramirez, this is why relationship is critical and should be the central focus. I'm a big one for customer experience. I learned that a long time ago when I started in the aftermarket running my Midas shops. There is no greater thing than earning the trust and respect of a family and doing all of their car business. Pat says, hi, Lou. Great. I agree on relationship. Michael Barrage, mystery and fear are low on the tone scale, according to Ron L. Hubbard. I thought it was L. Ron Hubbard. Or a different guy, maybe. Lou says, loyalty does not exist outside of relationships. Paul is so right. Cultivation, every seed has value, positive and negative. I think if you focus on the relationship, you will get every sale. You may not get it, in the very beginning, and you may not get it every time, but ultimately, they will come to you for everything they need as they can afford it. Yep. Pat says 85% of buying decisions is based on the relationships with the sales person, not the shop. That is 100% true. I've seen people buy stuff that, I've seen customers come in with a $300 payment at the end of their lease and say they're dropping the car off and they can't spend a penny more and be spot delivered at $450 a month with a big smile on their face, loving their new car like they just hit lotto.
Yep.
Pat says, Paul, spot on. The LTV lifetime value of the guest is $250,000. I mean, it's stupid money when you think about it. But people are keeping their cars on the road, 11 point something years now?
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, and you think about kind of just as we talk about CRM, realizing how important these customers are. I asked the question, and people can add, guess in the comments, because I don't know this answer, but how many people that visit your dealership actually get put into the CRM? Right? Because I don't know specifically what that is, right? But let's say it's 30%, which again, I that might be, heck, even if let's say it's 50%, right?
Yeah.
If 50%, which I think is high, was the answer, 50% of your decision making is based off of 50% of the data, right? So all of your reporting that you're looking at, if you're not getting everybody that's into the tool, that's off. So that's one thing. Two, your ROI is different because the CRMs look at what you spent and then how many leads you got and how many you sold. So going back to, some of the process stuff that I think is important is making sure that every single customer gets put into the CRM. Even if they are not in the market, just get them into the CRM. I think the future, dealerships if let's say the market crashes, or let's say legislation says, hey, you can't advertise to people anymore on social media, the dealerships that have the most data are the ones that are going to survive, right? And we talked about it before, right? If you can utilize the data in the CRM to cultivate your own leads, you don't have to spend so much on third-party lead providers, right? The cost of advertising is low, and you're helping build that retention, right? So you got to have an easy process to get that in place. And one of the things that I like to do is get the receptionist, just have her on a piece of paper, just start noting, customers she sees on the lot, and then compare that with the desk log in the CRM. And if you see a big discrepancy, it goes back to managers' accountability into this. And so you talked, I'm sorry, I'm taking some notes here and you got a lot of topics here. You mentioned about tools like CRMs being built around accountability. And, I say a CRM is built to improve that, but then I'll still go into a salesperson's to-do sheet and they'll have 300 to-dos in there. And I'm like, well, how can a tool that's supposed to help keep them accountable, how is this possible? And I think the biggest issue is the management, right? The management doesn't have insight into what's going on. And so one of the things that we built in our CRM is something called alerts. And I'm not saying that, you could do this process for anything, but what I think of it as like a check engine light. Instead of the managers every single day doing a 30-point inspection, which they can't because they're too busy, the check engine light only comes on when there's a problem, right? When the tires are low, when the oil change needs to be changed, right? So what we did in our CRM is we built these things called alerts that just notifies the manager when something is outside of that process. So as by exception. Exactly, right? So we talked about the issue of getting people in the CRM. So now we're looking at the CRM. If things aren't happening, right, they should be notified and then the manager should get involved. Often in the CRM, we look at what has been completed, right? How many calls did you do today? But what they don't look at is how many calls were left over, right? that's the thing where if something's left over that's not done, that can create an alert for the manager and say, hey, you need to be on this, because maybe there's an exception of, a day, some, overdue task happened. But if that gets to a certain point, there needs to be management involvement, right? Now, think of this even farther when you start thinking about KPIs and different reports. If somebody's closing percentage is a certain percentage, or somebody's response time all of a sudden gets higher than something, that's when you get a manager. Because I think what happens is you let these people, like they run their course and they're not following these process that we talk to. Then at the end of the month, we're not selling all the cars that we want. We start looking at the reports, but because it's doing a monthly summary, it's like, well, he still did 1,000 calls. He still responded, but it doesn't look at all those things that he missed and didn't follow the process, right? So just having a tool isn't really just about like, oh, you got to use it, but is the tool helping you to be a better manager, right? Is it helping you to be a better salesperson?
So your system has those warning lights built in for these things that you just mentioned.
Yeah. So if let's say if a salesperson hasn't logged into the CRM in X amount of days, if a salesperson has left the day with unfinished task, if a lead hasn't been responded to in a certain amount of time, even process stuff. So if you say, at my dealership, we have a process where every inbound call should have an appointment. Well, if there isn't, it notifies the manager. If you require a certain step in like a trade appraisal form before you desk a deal, and they're desking the deal and it doesn't have that, it notifies the manager, right? So just a couple of things that, we thought about in regards to kind of keeping managers accountable. And the other thing too was you mentioned a little bit about like, we've gotten away from just making calls. We're texting, we're emailing. And so what we did is we compartmentalized the activity to say, look, here are the calls, emails, and calls, emails, and text. But if you added all the three of those together, that's a touch. And so we start measuring this touch. And so every customer should have at least 3 touches, right? You call, you text, and then you email. So instead of looking at, well, me and you, right? We you're good on the phone, so you did 30 calls, but I only did 10. But if I did 20 emails, well, now it shows we're doing that. So then that's one of the things. But then we said, let's look at engagement. So we look at answered inbound calls, answered outbound calls, replies, emails, and texts. And now you have engagement. You got engagement. So now
you can coach the people.
Yeah, and exactly. So, because I always thought the issue was in the past was, what is a completed call? Is a completed call mean the salesperson did their job and picked up the phone and dialed, or did they actually get a hold of a customer? Because a lot of times we say, hey, make the call, but if they didn't get a hold of the customer, they complete that 15-day to-do, and they don't get a reminder to try that customer until day 20. So what we said is, look, if now we can measure the touches and the engagement, when an activity is created, it's to engage with that customer. And if you don't engage with that customer through an answered call or reply, email, or text, it stays up there, right? It's trying to get you to say, hey, you got to do this. Otherwise, these people are moving customers to loss because they're not getting the answered calls. So that's one of the things that we've done. And then in our reporting, even as you're looking at your customers, the customers at the top who are engaging the most are at the top. So you can actually see as a manager, the customers who are answering the calls, replying to the emails, those are the ones that are actually more likely to be a deal versus focusing on somebody that, here's an old customer, I made 100 calls to him, but I've never been able to get a hold of them, right? Well, are you emailing you? Are you texting them, right?
You got to do all three.
All of that stuff, right? And so a lot of the outdated CRMs, like me and you could be texting and then it enrolls them into a long-term email and phone campaign. Like that doesn't really make a lot of sense to us. So it's like and especially like these long-term campaigns, like the day 14 example that I gave you, like, let's say me and you text on day 15, you're going to get a message that says, hey, Paul, are you still in the market for, it's been 15 days since you just submitted a lead. And you're like, dumbass, I just talked to you, right? Like there's once you're enrolled in that campaign, like that's what it is. And every customer gets the same thing.
Yeah,
like
you're right.
It should be based off the last engagement. So when I engage with you, when I finally make those touches and I get an engagement, that next activity is based off that engagement, right? See, now, if I don't engage, right,
I don't care about making 100 phone calls. I'd rather have 3 successful completions or 3 successful conversions than just saying I made 100 phone calls. Now, I know we're getting close on time, and I'm behind on the comments, so I want to get to some of the comments, but great stuff. Steve Cheston says, Pat, What about BDC relationships, or do you include that as part of sales? Mine is both sales and service, reaching to the acquire service relationships maintained by the BDC, or somebody that is very good on the sales floor. I'm a big believer in BDC. I think it's a strong component of a dealership, because most dealerships, the salespeople, I hate to say it, but just are not motivated to make those phone calls. He says, Pat says, BDC is a key game changer and the new sales channel. And Steve says, LOL, 20 years new. No, you're right about that. Stan Share, it's actually amazing how many decision makers make decisions based on trends and not their own factual data. Yeah. How can you argue your own data? That's spot on, Stan. And that's part of why they don't have their managers in those meetings. No, spot on. Pat says, yep, I agree with you. Kyle Morrison, customer retention. And Chris Lynn sits there. She's my friend and local. She runs the repair shop that we bring two of our vehicles to. You are the product. Need to implement and learn and grow. Wise man walks between the fool and genius and learns from both. And Ron Usher says, I tell everyone, bring your car to the dealer. They know your car, not like the lube shops. They're worried of the price, but you get what you pay for. Trust. Well, I agree. The dealer knows the car like nobody's business, but I know plenty of aftermarket repair shops that do an awesome job, because I was one of those aftermarket repair shops that we were taking everybody's business because we showed them that we cared. One of my favorite lines from an old school car trainer, Jackie B. Cooper, in his Southern drawl says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that was true then, and it's true now, and it will be true long after we're dead. Chris Lynn says, yes, I want to do this. Talk to people, show you care. Lou Ramirez, wow, Hunter's getting a bag of the Car Guy coffee. I love your passion. DM me your address. And speaking of which, I want you to put links to wherever they can find you online, because some of the stuff that you mentioned truly is game changing, that the other systems, I liken a lot of CRMs to the Ronco rotisserie, right? Set it and forget it. And like you said, oh, it's been 15 days since you submitted your inquiry. Are you still in the market? No. Since you asked, no, I'm not in the market, even though we spoke yesterday, dumbass. So good point. I love that. Robert Sebastian. Along with the lease specials, I put the residual value in bold letters and show how most of the time you have the option to buy the vehicle at an advantage. And Pat says, Paul, approximately 33% is all about accountability. Crystal says, everyone that comes in is important. They get a thank you as well. They're the only ones in my decades in the business that send out handwritten thank you cards. And I just want to get a couple more comments and then we'll jump back. Robert Sebastian, train. It takes training and accountable sales reps to put everyone in the CRM, because you're right. Most of the time they don't end up in the CRM. And then the owners look at it, it's like, okay, well, we spent this much money. We only got these many people in the CRM, and of that percentage, only this many bought. When you have managing by exception, like a good DMS system, right? It's management by exception. When everything is within specs, there's not much cost to have to really worry about it. But when things are out of whack, and that's what I love about what you say you've engineered into your CRM, that's beautiful, because that keeps people in line so that the management can then talk to them ahead of time. Like, listen, you had this many ups, you had this much or little engagement, you're not doing as much of the text as you should, or the video, or whatever the case may be. If you look at everything holistically and know that this is the winning formula that gets sales over the curb, then you can coach them ahead of time so that you're helping them to earn. As you help them and they start making more sales, they're more willing to do it, and you have to babysit them less. So great stuff. Yeah. We're almost there before I let you get back, because I hate to miss out when people put comments in. Pat says rejection rate should be a KPI to coach on process, which is what I just talked about it. Great minds think alike, Pat. I love it, man. And Robert says, can you dial from your CRM, and does your software record the call having been made? Boom.
Absolutely. Yes, we do. So I guess just closing here to talk about our product here. And again, this isn't necessarily a pitch, but just to kind of educate people. As we built our tools, we looked at the issues that the dealerships were having, and we actually requested information and got that and built our tools. So Clubhouse has been a great app for us. Like, we've been doing rooms that say, hey, what do you hate about your tools? What do you hate about your website? What do you hate about advertising? What do you hate about CRM? They tell us, and then we go and we try to fix these problems. And so, when we look at advertising, too many dealerships are doing the same exact thing. They're dealing with vendors who have thousands of dealerships, and they're all using the same strategy, the same creative, and then they're wondering why they don't stand out. When you get to websites, there's so many websites that have OEM approval. And like, I got a Nissan website provider here in Southern California, and like 8 out of the 10 are using the exact same website provider. The websites look exactly the same. The only difference is the logo. And you have people and dealers who are so focused on co-op that they're losing innovation. So those are one of the things that we help and fix dealerships who don't want to do the same thing that everybody's doing on the website side. When you start getting into CRM, we really wanted to kind of change how people thought about CRM. First and foremost, we wanted an easy to use tool. Some of these tools require a lot of training. We wanted to eliminate that. We also wanted to get away from how salespeople view CRM. A lot of times they view it more as the tool that tells their managers that they're not doing a good job. So, inherently they're just not big fans of the CRM. But we wanted to focus on helping the salespeople in the dealerships use the CRM to generate the leads. More of a proactive tool versus a reactive tool where you're only going into it, when you get a lead or you get an up, right? And so, we're a big anti-third-party lead provider company. I mean, you should be advertising yourself. You should be using your CRM and not pay for that, those leads. We really want to make sure that we're helping managers be better managers, help them be more efficient. And then a couple of the other things that we're doing is trying to integrate things that aren't normally associated with the CRM into the CRM. Why are we looking at Google Analytics and Facebook reporting and it's not in the CRM? So we brought that in. I mentioned about creating audiences in our CRM and then exporting that into audiences into Facebook and doing Facebook's match back and making sure you're actually bringing over sold and gross in Facebook. Like, this is all really easy stuff that people aren't doing. And at the end of the day, we wanted to just provide a tool that's easy. I had a chance to show you a little bit of our tool a couple of days ago, and just a couple of the screens. And we wanted to really simplify this process and not make it overcomplicated. And maybe our tool doesn't do everything that every other tool does, but we really wanted to focus on use. Like, I always hear, what's the best CRM? It's the CRM that you use. And so we wanted to provide a tool that people would use, that they see some value. And when you take that with our websites, our advertising, our automation tools, we even have Craigslist posting tools, Facebook CRM bridges, and kind of all kind of things. You put all that plus our knowledge, we come into a dealership and we say, hey, how can we help you? And we have tools and products and services that help. And so that's what we've done, and that's what we've built. And we're really proud to say, this isn't a tool that I built or some tech guy built. Like, this tool was built directly from the feedback and complaints that dealerships had. So we've been working on it for a long time, and we just launched our CRM. We've got people on the beta that are loving it. And so we're just out trying to help dealers. So if I can help you in any way, reach out to me, and I'd love to help.
Awesome. I want you to put, if you get time, go through some of the comments here. You won't be able to do it in this platform, but after the show's over on a desktop computer, because we didn't get to all of the questions, and there's some great questions and comments that have come in here. Wow, this was, the time just flies. It seems like an hour just isn't enough, but I know an hour is still an hour's commitment out of somebody's life. So I try to be respectful and try to keep it within that time. But you've shared some great stuff here, some things that, quite frankly, in 41 plus years in the business, I have not seen in other CRMs. So definitely worthy of a look. If you're in a store and your store is using a CRM, everybody's using one. If you want to be in business, I would say take these off and reach out to this guy and at least take a look, because you just never know. I mean, some of the stuff that I've heard, and like I said, I'm 41 plus years in the business, is stuff that that not everybody's doing. And
Paul, what I'll do, because a couple of the other things that we fixed is we didn't want, when you sign up for a new CRM, usually it's a 6 to 8 week install. So we built a tool where we could build the tool within a couple of days, almost less than a day. So because of that, we can actually do free trials. So any of your audience that's interested, like I can do a 3-month trial pilot. You can use it side by side your current CRM. And if you like it, you can continue to do business with us. If you provide us some feedback to help make our tool better and to kind of change the future of CRM, I'd be more than happy to offer that to any of your clients.
Wait a minute. Are you making this a foolproof offer?
3-month trial on our CRM. Anyone wants to try it?
Wow. I mean, an offer like that. I think there was a movie one time. I'm going to make you an offer and you can't refuse.
Yeah.
That's awesome stuff.
I didn't want this to be a pitch, so I'm actually giving away a free CRM for 3 months. So there you go.
Free is not a pitch, man. And guess what? If it works and it makes someone's life easier, it saves them money and makes them money, then well worth it. I want to thank you very much for sharing an hour of your time with me on Easter Sunday. I greatly appreciate it. Like I said, if you could go through some of the comments, it seemed some of the stuff that we've missed. And I want to thank the audience that tunes in religiously every week and shares the show with their friends and their community. It means the world to me. And I'm going to keep working my butt off to bring you the content that helps you out. So thank you. And
awesome.
With that,
perfect. I just put my email in on the comment on LinkedIn. It's just hunter@dealersgear.com. Anybody want to reach out, you can reach out to me directly. But Paul, thank you so much. This was a great opportunity. I think we talked about a lot of things. I don't think we had any plan of all the tangents, but I think there was something of value, and hopefully your audience will, it's something that they'll think about and ultimately make some type of change to better their business, better the industry, and ultimately better the customer experience. So.
And remember, the last thing I want to leave you with, everybody has something until they find something better. And then they're like, oh man, why didn't I look at this before? Why? Because you didn't see it before, but now you have, so you have no excuse. Hunter, thank you again. And everybody have a successful week. We'll see you next week on Sunday Night Live.